more about how you would start the process of intensive interaction with somebody an awful lot more active and able than the Simon that I've been describing.
And in many cases, aggressive.
Yes,
And,
maybe their behaviour
appears aggressive, and they are noted down as having challenging behaviour, which I call distressed behaviour. Lots of labels, and they are dangerous basically, because the response they have learned is aggression. Their response to sensory overload is the one where actually I'm going to thump you or bite you because I want to get rid of you, because I perceive you as the source of my sensory distress. So the first thing I will do is I will try and avoid moving into their personal space until I have already established contact. And we'll see this with Pranve, because Pranve had a whole load of history which was pretty frightening.
And it was go away.
It was go away, yes. And I was scared.
It was easy to interpret it as go away.
I was scared basically because I had a book that thick, all the things that led to him being excluded from various day centres. So what happens then is, when we come to the film, is when his mother opens the door, and I'm with the speech therapist and his mum and dad are inside, and I listen. I don't go in. I don't cross the threshold. Yeah. Because and what I hear in the rest of the house is and so what I do is I say which is basically the rhythm of hello, here I am, and this terribly dangerous man comes and takes my hand and leads me into the sitting room. So that's the sort of thing that I will always try and do. I won't cross the threshold until I've found a way of interacting with a person, because I don't want to present danger. Similarly, I will use gesture rather than words. But I will use words, but if I'm with a more able person, but I say, may I come in? So I'm using gesture to support any words that I use. And I will wait until they give me permission. I've been kept out 20 minutes in the rain occasionally before I get permission. And then suddenly they'll say yes, and so you go in. But then you don't move beyond the threshold, because the visual difficulties, if they have severe autism, may mean that they don't actually see all me. They see my glasses, or they see my shoes, or something I'm wearing, the logo that somebody's insisted I wear, to say who I am, the badge, and all these are moving around, these things, and so I present as a scary picture. So I'm going to stand just inside the threshold for a little while, allow them to do whatever they're doing, and then I'll say, may I sit down?
So you're doing everything you can to make it clear that you are not a threat. You're using his sounds in which to speak to him to make yourself sensorily acceptable to him. You're moving very slowly, you're not proceeding until he's...
Well, at each stage he needs to know what I'm going to do next before he does it, before I do it.
So lots of...
And I have to have permission.
Yeah.
And so I'll sit down. Now the point about sitting down is that actually it's more difficult to run if things get too bad, but you'll present far less of a threat if you're sitting. So I usually opt for that. And I do usually have somebody with me, so I'm not really in physical danger. But it can be quite frightening. And then I will simply join in with what they're doing, basically. And in the case of a man who's screaming, stupid faces, silly noises, and I'm banging his head on the wall and breaking up everything, I engage with what he's saying.
What do you do?
I say, I can make silly faces and do stupid noises, and but these are things that people have been shouting at him.
Yes.
You can hear the voices of his history.
Yes.
And they're pretty...
Yeah. So at that moment, you're going to let him know that you've really noticed what he's doing, but you've also noticed that what he's doing is an expression of how he's feeling.
But also that, as far as I'm concerned, I don't mind what he's doing. And it's just the way I accept it as his way of telling us about the past.
Okay. So there is not judgment.
There's no judgment at all, and that's really, really important.
Your agenda is not to correct his behaviour. Your agenda is to say hello.
Absolutely. And this normally works, I think in the years where I've seen thousands of people, I've only been attacked about 3 or 4 times.
Well, that's
that was when I made a mistake.
Yeah.
And I knew that I made a mistake.
Yeah. I think that's fascinating, because us and Abus has now been going for 25 years. When we've worked, some of the people we support are people who really find the world a very distressing place to be and express that physically. And again, we're often warned, be careful. Yeah. And I have to say that, there's now 14 of us working in this way. We have hours and hours and hours, thousands of hours of contact with people. And in all of that time, there have been possibly 5 incidents when one of us has got hurt. Yeah. And again, it's either where we've made a mistake or somebody else in the room has made a mistake, and we've been the nearest object. Target. And I'm not complacent about this. I'm not saying that that intensive interaction is an utterly safe way of working, but my goodness, it is such an effective way of lowering people's anxiety.
Yes, absolutely.
And when they are less anxious, they are less liable to hurt me and to hurt themselves.
I'd like to tell you about one mistake I made.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's very interesting. This man, nobody would work with him because he was presenting such challenges, they said. And he would headbutt people, and he could knock them out quite easily. He was a big chap. And I was asked if I'd go and see him. And what happens is he has breakfast. It's in a small room, I suppose about 3 or 4 metres by 5 or 6 metres, something like that, and about 10 people with autism having a noisy breakfast, And then he goes to his room and he starts to bellow and bang his head on the wall. And this can go on up for 10 hours. Now what's happening there is perseveration. We talked about perseveration.
Having the experience again
and again.
Yeah.
This noise is going on in his head. So anyway, I stand outside in the corridor. I'm certainly not going in his room, because if you do, you're going to be attacked big time. He's going to get rid of you. And so I stand in the corridor, and every time he bellows, I go, So these are empathetic responses to his distress.
In his language.
In his language, exactly.
Yeah.
And after a few minutes, his head comes out of the door, and he looks at me. And so I'm going to do a different one this time. I say, which basically, I'm here. Opening yourself, And he goes back in and he starts bellowing again. And this goes on for, each time he bellows, I answer him. And then something else happens. Somebody comes out of a room, walks along the corridor, we're in the upstairs, and goes down the stairs, slams the door. And it sounds as if I have walked out on him. And he shuts out immediately.
Yeah.
Looking for me. And I say, I'm all right. So this time it's, I'm here.
Yeah.
It's not opening us. So I'm here. It's okay. And he walks past me, walks downstairs, goes into a room he's never been in before in the daytime, sits down, and the manager is with me observing all this. And so we go downstairs, and I stand outside the room and continue a more peaceful conversation, and gradually we get him to the stage he's quite quiet. Well, I have to teach in 10 minutes' time, and one voice in my head saying, look, go into the room and see what happens, see how close you can get, and the other saying, don't do it, he's not ready.
Not ready, too fast.
Unfortunately, I listened to the wrong one. And so I go in, and by the time I'm about 3 feet from him, wham, and I get headbutted quite badly. But the manager says, look, he's never behaved like this. He's never come downstairs before. He was staying into his room about 10 hours. So he wasn't getting fed. Nobody could get near him. She said, this is really working for him. I'm going to use this way of interacting with him. So I said, well, yes, that's fine, but I think you need to look at breakfast, because the real problem is that he's getting these noises into his head. He's just going on and on and on and on, repeating it all day, that day, and he cannot bear it. It is hurting him. And so she said, right. And then she said, well, something that still makes me laugh. I'll take him to McDonald's for breakfast. Now, McDonald's is dead quiet at breakfast. It's exactly the same. There's nobody shouting and screaming. And it worked like a charm.
Really?
And the whole thing stopped.
Goodness me.
It was as simple as that.
Yeah.
He was getting these sounds in his head. They was perseverating. It was putting him in agony all day.
Yeah.
He was shouting and screaming and trying.
And in fear about the next day. Oh my goodness, it's going to start again.
The whole time.
Yeah.
So he lived in a permanent state of high anxiety.
Yes.
Which he was trying to get rid of all the sensory overload, including me, including everybody.
Yes.
And what she did was she used to take him out for breakfast, and then he would come back after breakfast where everybody had gone for work, and that was the end of the problem.
Yes. McDonald's comes to the rescue, dressed as Phoebe Caldwell.
This is the sort of thing that I will look at. I established the interaction which was meaningful for him, but I also looked for the underlying trigger, which was, in this case, a noisy breakfast.
So you're attending to the sensory needs of that individual through your careful observation and interpretation of that. You're seeing if that works. At the same time, you're lowering his anxiety by using his language. So you're establishing this virtuous circle rather than the vicious circle that he's in at the moment.
But I also made a mistake by not attending to my own inner sense of what I should do or not do. And that monitoring one's own reactions is absolutely critical, particularly if you're working with somebody who presents physical aggression. You really do have to monitor extremely carefully your own reactions as well as theirs.
Because if your gut reaction is telling you something, it's possibly based on something that you have seen, but aren't actively aware of,
it's
but
wonderful.
you
What's
have
it
absorbed
called?
it.
The undermine.